What happens when you're born into a name the world already decided the meaning of? When your last name whispers something before you ever speak a word? In the hills of West Virginia, two young men, Brandon and Luis Whittaker, carry a family name that echoes through silence. Not for fame, not for power, but for something far more haunting. They are the next generation of a lineage shaped by isolation, poverty, and something deeper. A silence passed down like blood. Raised in the shadows of misunderstanding, spoken of more than spoken to, these two have something their elders never had: words. This isn't a story about inbreeding. This is a story about inheritance. Not of money, but of memory. Not of glory, but of burden. And maybe, just maybe, about the fragile hope of breaking a cycle by daring to speak into the silence. Odd, West Virginia, a place whose name feels like a warning. Tucked in the folds of the Appalachian Mountains, it's not on many maps, and for years, few dared to go. It's not the kind of silence you hear. It's the kind that grows between rotting porches and broken fences, between bloodlines that loop back on themselves, between stories nobody tells. This is where Brandon and Luis Whittaker were born, into stillness, into shadow, into a house that was already heavy with history before they ever took their first breath. They didn't grow up like most kids. There was no bedtime story, no framed graduation photo waiting on the wall. Their earliest memories are of wood creaking under bare feet, the air thick with cigarettes and the unspoken weight of things that came before them. They were raised by Larry, not a father, not quite a grandfather, but someone who tried. Someone who had already seen too much, said too little. Their mother was there, sometimes. Their father, just a name they never knew. What remained was the house, the silence, and the eyes of others. Because in Odd, everyone knows the Whittakers, and everyone has something to say, but not to them, about them. Brandon remembers people driving by the house just to stare, sometimes filming, sometimes laughing. Luis remembers the day someone threw a bottle at their yard from a truck window. They were young, but not too young to understand they were different. Not too young to know that shame can arrive before understanding. The world outside was distant, the world inside confined. And yet, they survived. Their playground was the rusted back porch. Their lullaby was the hum of a box fan and the quiet sobs of grown-ups after the lights went out. They grew up in a house built not just of wood and dust, but of repetition, of names repeated, of choices repeated, of silences too old to break, and still. Brandon and Louis stood in that silence, blinking into the world, already carrying a legacy they never asked for, already searching for something more. The Whittaker name became known not for words, but for the absence of them, for grunts and barks, for silence and glances, for a family whose mouths rarely formed language the world could understand. And then came Brandon, then came Luis, born into that hush, but not held inside it. They speak, not just with words, but with memory, with pain, with questions. Luis once said, "It was fun when we were little, until you get older and understand what's going on." He remembers his mother disappearing for days, the sirens, the shouting. He remembers being taken away. Foster care, confusion, strangers. He was 6. Brandon remembers being passed from house to house, eventually to an aunt. He remembers quiet rooms, food that sometimes came late, the growing awareness that other families weren't like his. But they speak. They say they want out. Brandon says, "As soon as I can save up, I'll probably get away from here." And they dream. Luis once thought he'd become a nurse, maybe even a doctor. Something that would matter, something that would heal. They're not loud. Their voices don't beg for sympathy. They're careful, deliberate, like the words have to earn their way out. But they speak, and that makes them different, not better, not removed, just different. They are the first to put voice to the silence, the first to answer questions their uncles could only blink through. The world sees Brandon and Luis as the next Whittakers, but they, quietly, steadily, are trying to become something else. Every family has its fights. But for Brandon and Luis, the fighting wasn't just yelling, it wasn't just fists. It was the sound of a gun going off inside their home. Luis remembers it clearly. He was maybe 6 or 7. His grandfather Larry, the man who tried to raise them, fired a gun at the wall, aiming near their stepfather. The man had been hitting their mother. Larry snapped. No one was killed, but everything shattered. That night, Louis was taken by child services, placed in a foster home. No explanations, no goodbyes, just another strange room, another bed that wasn't his. Brandon, too, bounced around, from one relative to another, to an aunt for a while. Some days felt okay, others felt cold. He stopped expecting stability. Survival was enough. The system was supposed to protect them. Instead, it scattered them. Louis fell harder. At 15, he was charged with arson, first degree. He doesn't talk about the details, just that he was angry, confused, watching his world collapse again. He spent 7 months locked away for a parole violation. Brandon didn't go to jail, but he lived through another kind of sentence. His mother, BJ, spiraled into addiction. First pills, then meth, then heroin, crack. He watched her fade. He says, "I smoke a little weed, but I've never touched what she did. I couldn't." That single decision, to break the cycle, is his quiet revolution. No speeches, no therapists. Just a boy deciding not to become the thing that broke him. They are not saints. They are not victims. They are young men who inherited a storm, and then tried to walk through it. Luis says he once dreamed of becoming a nurse, maybe a doctor, something useful. He doesn't say it anymore, but the dream's ghost lingers in his voice. This is not just a story of broken homes or shattered dreams. It's the story of what happens when a child grows up without safe adults, without second chances, without soft places to land. The trauma is not in their genes. It's in the world that watched them suffer and only offered judgment. And still, they survived. Bruised, hardened, a little quieter than before, but still standing. Not all dreams are spoken. Some live in the eyes, when they drift to a far-off thought. Some hide in pauses, in the way someone says maybe, and then never finishes the sentence. Brandon and Luis have dreams. They just don't always know how to tell them. Brandon wants to leave. That much he says aloud. "As soon as I can save up," he says, "I'll probably get away from here." He doesn't say where. He doesn't say when. But you can feel the urgency behind his eyes, like something inside him is banging on a locked door. Odd, West Virginia is a place people don't leave. It traps people in memory, in shame, in history that repeats itself like a curse. Brandon knows this. He knows what his name means to outsiders. He's seen the cameras, the internet comments, the fascination laced with pity. Luis is quieter, but if you ask him about the future, his voice softens. "I used to want to be a nurse, maybe even a doctor." He smiles when he says it, like the thought alone is a kind of escape. But dreams are hard to hold in a house with no heat, in a place where the world has already decided who you are. Sometimes survival swallows ambition. Sometimes the dream stays silent because speaking it makes it real, and failing becomes unbearable. So they carry it, in long walks down gravel roads, in the way Brandon stands on the porch, staring at the tree line like it's the edge of a world he hasn't touched, in the way Luis fiddles with his hands when no one's talking, like he's building something invisible, something that might carry him away. This chapter of their lives is quiet. Not much moves, not much changes. But under that stillness, something breathes. Not rebellion, not anger, just the soft pulse of a dream that refuses to die. They've never had maps, never had a plan, but they've imagined something more, even if they don't yet believe they deserve it. And sometimes, that's the first step. There's a moment when the camera lingers on Brandon and he doesn't say anything, just looks. It lasts 3 seconds, but says everything, because silence used to be all they had. It was their inheritance, their armor, their cage. But now, slowly, something is breaking open. Brandon has begun to tell his story, not for attention, not for forgiveness, just because he can. I just want to get away, he says, somewhere different, somewhere quiet, but not like this. It's not a scream. It's not even a cry. It's a statement of becoming. Luis is more careful. His voice doesn't rise, but his words are whole. He speaks of mistakes, fire, jail, bad choices, but he speaks with the clarity of someone who knows what it cost. He doesn't defend it. He doesn't glorify it. He just says, I was angry. I didn't know what else to do. And that's enough. Because in a world that often speaks about them, they are beginning to speak for themselves. It doesn't sound like rebellion. It doesn't sound like freedom. It sounds like truth. And truth, spoken plainly, is louder than noise. There's no redemption arc, no cinematic finale, no sweeping moment of change. There's just a boy on a porch saying maybe he'll leave one day. There's just a brother who once wanted to be a doctor, who still carries that dream like a worn photograph in his back pocket. And that is the voice emerging, not from genetics, not from media, from them, real, flawed, quiet, brave. They are not the future of a family tree. They are the root of something else entirely. They were born into silence, not the peaceful kind, the kind that hides things, the kind that grows when no one is listening. Brandon and Luis didn't choose this name. They didn't choose this place. They didn't choose the eyes that followed them, the whispers, the headlines. But what they did choose matters. They chose to speak, carefully, honestly. Not to impress, not to perform, just to tell the truth. And in doing that, they broke something. Not the past, that still lingers, but the pattern. They are not the myths. They are not the shame. They are not the punchline. They are boys who became men with almost nothing,